Welcome to Wellbeing Wednesdays with Harbinder Narula. Life is all about ups and downs, and sometimes failures teach you much more than your success does. Someone who has learned from life and is now a mentor in his own unique way to the generation of today. Let's talk to our guest, Ankur Warikoo, a content creator who has worked in the corporate environment before becoming an entrepreneur. He's been through his ups and downs before turning into a relatable content creator with millions of followers on YouTube. Welcome, Ankur, to Wellbeing Wednesdays. Ankur, welcome to Business World. Let me begin by asking you that what have been some of the most impactful situations in your life that have helped you evolve to be the Ankur Warikoo that the world knows today?
That's such a great question to start with. How much time do we have? the
Enough. I have the time.
the I feel so blessed, Harbinder, to have lived my life. I'm 42 years of age, and I frankly could not have imagined myself to be here if I were to go back to when I was 15 or 18, trying to visualize my life. And everything that I have come to be has frankly been a series of lots of failures, but reflecting upon those failures, which has been my biggest learning, that everyone in their life will fail inevitably, but very few of us go on to succeed in whatever definition of success we think. And the difference, I believe, between that failing and that success is the art of reflecting upon that failure. Why did it happen in the first place? What can I learn from it? And how can I ensure that it doesn't happen again, or I don't fall into that trap? And that is one thing that I really pride upon, because I have failed, and I don't think I'm any different. If anything, I'm far less smarter than most people I know, and far less hardworking than most people I know, because of which I've failed a lot more than others. But I've learned a lot from that failure, which have gotten to me there. And if I were to pick three momentous failures, if I can, of my life, one was, and I wouldn't call them failures now, but if I were to just use that word, one was dropping out of my PhD program while I was a student in the US and coming back to India. It felt like life was over. It felt like nothing was going my way, but I'm so glad that happened. And that was number one. Number two was when I stepped down as, when I stepped down as the CEO of Nearby. I don't think I was entirely happy with how the Nearby journey had been, because we'd imagined a very, very different journey for ourselves. And I thought that I was capable enough to lead into that journey, but it nearly did not happen. So I felt like I let down a lot of people, including my own self. And that was a moment of reflection. And number three was not so much of a failure, but a turning point, where we went to Groupon in 2015, which is what I was leading, at least in the Indian market. And we said, hey, it's not working out, and we want to do this independently. So we want to buy the Groupon India business from you. And that felt like a moment of victory, but in hindsight, it was also a moment of immense challenge, because it set me up on a path that I did not anticipate, and I'm so grateful for. So these will be three things that I picked up, and that shaped me up meaningfully, amongst several other things that I have.
Awesome. So, Ankur, let me ask you a question that has been on my mind for a very long time. People get upset because of unmet expectations, and many a times these expectations are set by no one else but ourselves, right? Uh, we all have been working in a corporate environment or have become entrepreneurs, and we become ambitious, and our mentors keep telling us that live a life with contentment, do not compare yourself with others. Now, can contentment and ambition coexist?
The reason I'm taking my time is because I'm, one, shocked that you're asking me this question, because I perpetually live with this question in my head. And it's so amazing that you're asking me this, Arvinder, because I don't have an answer to this. I frankly don't. And I'll tell you why I struggle even till date. because I was this ambitious kid that you're talking about, who was given everything on a platter to say, okay, take the capital, take the resources, take the fame, take everything, and make something big out of it. And I was driven by that purpose, and it used to consume me day in and day out. And I was certain that it would happen until it didn't. And now I'm living a very, very different life where I know I'm not ambitious anymore, and I'm immensely content. And I love my life, and I love how I'm getting to live it. And I love how much love is coming my way, despite me not craving for it or even seeking it in the first place. So I don't know what is ambitious anymore. And if I were to, if you put a gun to my head and said, no, you have to give an answer, my answer would be that ambition needn't be this grand, big thing that people make it to be. Ambition is not necessarily creating a dent in the world. Ambition is not necessarily about changing the world in a fashion that the world remembers you long after you're gone. Ambition could very well be the ambition to live life in a way that perhaps nobody knows of you, but you're immensely happy with it. Ambition could very well be just your desire to be creating impact in your own small world and be so happy with it that you couldn't care less about the world outside. Ambition could be that you feel no need to compare yourself with somebody else because you know yourself in and out, and you're just so blessed to be living your life. And if that, which I do believe is a rationalization at my end, but if I were to use that as a definition of ambition, then in some way I am content and ambitious at the same time. But I do recognize that the true world's definition of ambition doesn't at least coincide with my definition of contentment in the way that I see it.
Lovely, lovely. So, Ankur, when I read about your journey, I see you as someone who follows your heart, does things instinctively, which to my mind makes you a risk taker, at least in my perception, right? And you're someone who loves to experiment. That's my understanding of your journey, of whatever little bit I know. Now, as someone who has moved from the corporate world to becoming an entrepreneur, what have been some of the lessons that you would like to share with someone who wishes to quit his corporate career to become an entrepreneur? And I'll tell you later why I'm asking you this question.
Okay. The one thing that I do admit is entrepreneurship is suddenly so cool and so sexy and so in demand and in vogue that people feel it's almost an insult if you're in a job. And I really hate that, because dissing upon anything that you feel is below you is never going to be cool, is never going to be kind. So I often tell people there is no shame in a 9-to-5 job. In fact, the smartest people, the most successful people, the most stable people, the most comfortable people that I know of in my life are not the entrepreneurs. Instead, the professionals who have worked their life but were extremely in love with what they did, and they were really good with what they did. And so they progressed and grew up that ladder and still continue to enjoy the benefits of that. So please don't be allured by that. And which is why I often say that any motivational gyan that tells you quit your job and follow your passion is basically disregarding all practicality of life. Please don't do that because it's foolish. Stick in your job because it gives you something that is immensely valuable, financial stability. It's a thing, and you only recognize it's a thing once you don't have it. So while you have it, please respect it for what it is. And of course, if you're driven by something else or you would like to experiment with something else, spend your nights, your weekends, your holidays in grooming that, in exploring that, in figuring out what else could drive you. And that doesn't have to happen overnight. And there is enough and more space for everybody to come. And I've found very rare instances of people realizing that timing was everything. I say that timing isn't everything. In fact, when you stop questioning when is the right time, is the right time, because that's when you know you're convinced in your head that you should do it. So please don't become an entrepreneur because it's cool to become one. Please don't become one because you think it'll make you money. Please don't become one because you hate your current life. Become one because at some point of time, you don't know of anything else to become. And at that point of time, it will make absolute sense to do so. And the last thing that at least I have recognized about my life, and I think it's mostly true for people who would be listening to this conversation, please recognize that your downside is capped. All of us are immensely privileged. The fact that we're hearing this interview on a smartphone, on a 5G connection or a high-speed Wi-Fi tells us that we have achieved something in life because of which we're never going to die of hunger or poverty or lack of money or anything. Our downside is actually capped, but our upside is infinite. It could be anything we wish to. And in that sense, I don't think I've taken a lot of risks in my life. I feel that all of them were very smart, calculated decisions where I knew that the worst thing that would happen is this new thing that I am pursuing not working out. But I could always go back to the thing that I came from. Like when I quit consulting to become an entrepreneur back in 2009, I knew that if for whatever reason my startup didn't work, I could go back to consulting. I was living on a high. I was still good at it. When I quit the Groupon fervor and then started Nearby, I knew that if Nearby were to not happen, I could always go back to that corporate world in some sense or become an executive of a high-flying internet company and things would be okay. So my downside was always capped, but my upside could be anything that I wanted to be. And I think that's certainly true for a lot of people, if not for everyone listening in. So please don't think of your downside as what are you going to lose from today. Think of your downside as what is the worst that can happen. And you'll be surprised, at least I am always, that your worst thing that you imagine isn't actually the worst thing that can happen.
So, let me share with you the reason I asked you this question is because I moved from a corporate role to becoming an entrepreneur. And all the reasons which guided me to become an entrepreneur actually came as assumptions gone wrong because, that you wanted to be your own boss. I had several bosses now, my customer, my employees, my family. You wanted to control your time. You had no control over your time. You wanted to make more money. You were actually now spending more money. So but there was something bigger. I found my purpose in what I was doing. And so, in your opinion, is entrepreneurship about a certain mindset that people must have? Some fearlessness or something? What is that mindset? And does it need to be only for entrepreneurs, or can people be entrepreneurial in their jobs?
Oh, that's beautiful. I so concur with what your point of view is, Harbinder, here. I believe that entrepreneurship is not a profession, it's a state of mind. And the best entrepreneur that I've come across with are on paper, not entrepreneurs. Like, forget everything else. When you look at people like Satya Nadella, when you look at people like Sundar Pichai, when you look at people like Sheryl Sandberg, are they entrepreneurs? Well, technically not. They didn't start the company they were leading. They don't own a sizable equity in that company. They have just paid a handsome salary, of course, very handsome salary, but that's pretty much it. With all technical reasons, they are not entrepreneurs. But I'd argue that they're better entrepreneurs than most entrepreneurs out there in the world because of the way that they think. Because even in a job, they're constantly thinking of how to challenge themselves. They're not looking to protect their job. They're looking to stretch themselves, challenge themselves, and get to an order where they recognize a bigger self of themselves. And I think that that's the entrepreneurial DNA, which is why I would admit that most people who become successful in corporate lives are truly entrepreneurial. Because you cannot be successful in a corporate job if you're not thinking like one. Where my favorite question, how many years of experience do you have? And people say, I have 5 years. And then my response is that 5 years of experience or 1 year of experience done 5 times? Because most people are the latter. They're just going in that treadmill over and over again, doing the same thing. And because they're doing the same thing, they're getting better at doing the same thing, but they're never doing anything new. So at some point of time, if something comes along that does their job cheaper, faster, better, it eventually replaces them. And then they're like, yaar, ye kya ho gaya? 5 saal tak itna fight maar ke, jadojahad, and nothing came out of it. It's because you weren't knowing or executing anything new. So I do think that there is an entrepreneurial mindset. And that entrepreneurial mindset is being comfortable with chaos, being comfortable with lack of structure, being able to challenge things and look at things from a first principles perspective. As Steve Jobs famously said, the world around you has been created by people who are on an average no smarter than you are. And that means that you can challenge everything that you know about the world and create a better world. And only an entrepreneur will think like that, because most employee mindsets will be like, this is it. I've been told to do this. My manager is right. My leadership is right. This is my job and I will do it. I'll not question. And the final thing about the entrepreneurial mindset is that they know and recognize what they're good at and they double down on that. And they cover up their weaknesses, not through their own work, but through people. And I find that a big distinction. A lot of the world is told, work on your weaknesses, work on your weaknesses. And we spend an inordinate amount of time working on our weaknesses because we think that that's going to help us cover the base. But the truth is, working on your strengths is going to give you a far bigger jump. And you have to then cover your weaknesses, not through your own endeavors, but through a team or a set of individuals that cover up for you, because they're better at that than you can ever be. And that is the way that you move along. So yeah, mindset.
Got it. And I can't agree with you more on this. Like I said, you are someone who appears to be experimenting with life. I mean, I don't see you ending that experimentation anytime soon. And that's what I make of it. Uh, like, for example, your studies, you went for your studies to US, your job, your entrepreneurial stint. Did you get bored with it, or did you stop enjoying it, or did you not see any scale in it, or you sensed another opportunity? What was it? And do you have any regrets on the hindsight?
The second question is a far easier one. I certainly don't have any regrets. And I think it'll be foolish of me to regret anything, because I don't know how these things have really contributed to where I am. So when people ask, "No, would you change something about your life, or do you regret anything?" Like, absolutely not. Like, I'm just so happy with where things have worked out, and I couldn't wish anything else. But the reasons why I made those changes were actually very different for those different reasons. My biggest learning when I dropped out of my PhD program when I was in the US was, I realized I was good at what I was doing. I was really good at what I was doing, but I wasn't happy. And it was a shocking revelation, because for the first time in my life, it struck me that what you're good at and what makes you happy could be two entirely different things. And that wasn't something that I was prepared for. So I had to reset my own structure and my own rules of life. When I quit my consulting job and I became an entrepreneur in 2009, giving away the money and the respect and the prestige that everything comes along with consulting, there I knew for a fact that nobody got up in the morning wishing that they had more consultants in their life. And so it just felt like I was just drinking my own Kool-Aid and making myself feel more important with those Excel sheets and those presentations. And of course, I was getting paid so much and working with very smart people. It's a drug that you can easily live in and feel like that's the entire world. But I just felt it's not going to make any difference to the world. And the world can do without consultants. Like, consultants have to prove their worth, but nobody really believes there. So that was it. And of course, running a startup just felt so amazing and exciting at that point of time. And then quitting that Groupon journey and starting Nearby was very clearly a point of, it's frustrating to work at Groupon because they can't, for all the right reasons, give the attention that India deserves and warrants. But I can do a lot more about that. So I want to hold charge and make that happen. And then me quitting Nearby and deciding to figure out what I wanted to do in life was more of a very realistic realization about my opportunity cost. I didn't think me staying in Nearby was going to materially change the outcome of Nearby, but me spending every single second there meant that I was keeping a second away from something else, which I didn't know what it would be, but certainly was something. And there was this massive opportunity cost that I had to explore, or at least to discover for myself. So each one of them have had their own reasons, and I'm glad that those reasons came in at those right times for me to make those decisions.
Yeah. So, Ankur, you know what? I speak to a lot of people, and I'm yet to come across someone who has never had any challenges in life. We have all had challenges. And some of the things are easier said and done. That, when people meet you, consultants, coaches, mentors, and they keep throwing these things on you that, when there's a problem, ask for help. There's nothing better than asking for it. But this is one of the most difficult things for people to do. What do you think can make it easier and more comfortable for people to seek help?
I think the the first thing that people need to do is to recognize that they can be helped. I feel most people either don't seek help because they don't want to burden people, but that's usually with people who are close to them. Like, I don't want to burden my family with my problems. I don't want to burden my friends with my problems and so on. But the other side is people don't seek help because they genuinely think they can't be helped. And the way to navigate through that, at least my way of doing that, is sit with yourself and write down what you're going through. Write it down physically, piece of paper, write it down. It's like a form of journaling, if you will. And when you begin to write it down and you're just throwing your emotions out on that piece of paper and you're feeling a lot of things, end it by saying, I think this would help, and just fill in the blank. So one favorite question of mine, when people send in me emails, I'm lost, I'm confused, I don't know what to do, I have these choices to make, I have these decisions to make, blah, blah, blah. My immediate question to them is, what will help you the most at this point of time? And it's crazy how many people don't know the answer, because all that they wanted was just to share what they were going through, but they didn't know what could help them. And if you don't know what will help you, it will be harder for you to seek help, because asking for help in the universe is like almost wishing. Then you're just praying, and then you could very well just stand in front of a temple or a mosque or a church and just hold your hands and saying, please help me, whosoever there is that I believe in. But that's not how it's going to work. So you need to be very clear of what kind of help. So that's number one. Number two, then just float it into the universe. Very few people float it into the universe because they ask for specific people. And when they ask for specific people, they get offended or their belief gets validated that no one is out there to help them. So I instead say, drop the embarrassment, drop the shame, drop the guilt, and publicly ask for help. Like literally put up a WhatsApp status saying, hey, is there anybody who can help me with X? Go on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, wherever. Is there anybody who can help me with X? Because then you're not asking somebody, you're actually asking anybody, but you know what to ask for. And number three, when you do get a response, and you'll be surprised at how many responses will come your way, be respectful of their time and be as specific with the help as possible. Because a lot of people get confused between help and knowledge. How do I do this is knowledge, and Google will give you that knowledge. But if you've already gone through it and you have now a result that you cannot process, that's where you need help. And so you need to be very specific. So if people come up to me and saying, hey, how do I reach out to investors? That's not seeking help, my friend. That's just basic knowledge that you can get through a Google search. But if you tell me I've reached to 20 investors and I haven't heard from one of them, now that's where I could help. Because I could then tell you what could be wrong with your pitch deck or your pitch or your email or whatnot. Because that's when I know that you've processed something, it hasn't worked, and now you need help on.
Very beautifully explained, Ankur. Ankur, you have that glow on your face. You always look charged up. What is the secret of your energy?
One, my two lights, because they make me shine very bright. But not to be flippant with your question, I'm genuinely happy. And I am genuinely very, very, very grateful for the life that I get to live. I have no reason to complain. So I was in a fascinating conversation for one of my YouTube videos with a YouTube creator called Tech Burner. His name is Shlok, and he's terrific with what he does, and I really like him. But it's like technology and comedy and a very different genre in that sense. And I asked him, what gives you that energy as well? And his response was so similar to what I would say. He's like, I don't have anything negative in my life. I don't surround myself with negative people. I don't, and this is true for me, I don't surround myself with negative people. I don't consume the news. I do not follow any content that is negative in nature. I do not compare myself with others. I do not read comments, either good or bad, that could then generate some energy in me. I am so in love with my team and I handpick them, I pamper them, I give them everything that they would love so that they can help me with whatever I want to do. I have a lovely family that I get to spend time with. We have parents that we can attend to. We thankfully now have money to pay for a lot of their comfort. So it's just all together. And I genuinely don't have any side of me that I feel sad or frustrated about. So I'll be, it'll be very, very dumb, foolish, selfish of me to say that I have any reason to be unhappy. So, and if I don't have a reason to be unhappy, then it better show up on my face.
Right. Now, Ankur, there are two questions which are very, very burning in my head. So I'm going to take 5 minutes more, right? Uh, they say it is very important for people to pursue a hobby, right? Pursue some passion. And specifically, as and when you go senior and when you start saying that I don't have time, it's time for you to pick up some hobby which keeps you busy besides your work. But a lot of people are unable to find their hobby or discover something within them which could trigger their passion. What do you have to say or recommend to people who have not yet discovered their passion?
This is incidentally one of the questions in my latest book, Harbinder, where I picked up 36 questions that people frequently ask about life. And one of those questions is classically, how do I find my passion? And I say, number one, the question is wrong in the first place because you don't find your passion. It seems to suggest that your passion is hidden somewhere, but it isn't hidden somewhere. Like it's not behind the sofa or under the table or in some cupboard. It's something that you hone over the years. It's something that you discover over the years. So your passion is not to be found, it's to be built. And the way to do that is, number one, to give it time. And number two, to be in that exploration mode. So my way of doing that, which is what I described in the book as well, is whatever is your day job that pays for the bills, please don't disregard that because that is important, as we rightly pointed out earlier as well. Financial stability is a thing. But your nights, your weekends, your holidays, whatever time it is, just make a list of everything that you like doing, everything that you like doing. And it could be meaningless. It could also be, say, sleep. And people find it funny when I say that. It's like, no, if you like sleeping and you actually are a very sound sleeper, you may know something that the world would want to know because a lot of people don't get sound sleep. So don't disregard that interest of yours and say, no, it can't become a passion. What if you could actually become a sleep expert? Who knows? You never know, but you will only know when you dig deep into it. So make a list of all the things that you really like and start seeing whether you would want to do something about it seriously, because there could be some things that you wouldn't want to. That will also eliminate things that you're not good at. So you may like singing, but you may be a terrible singer. And that's true for most of us. And we be like, what? That's fine. I like it. So I'll sing in the bathroom, but it's never going to become my passion. And that's fine. But you will be left with things that you like doing and you perhaps could be good at. And then you have to act like a student. You genuinely have to act like a student, take up courses, connect with people, become part of communities online, spend time, say, freelancing, picking up projects. And over a period of time, you'll begin to realize some of them you actually have a knack for. Some of them, maybe not so much. You like them, you're good at them, but no, you can't see them really materializing. And just pursue. And it is my fundamental belief that the minute you begin to pursue that and don't put any pressure of making money from it, you do it for the true joy of it and you really get good at it. And when you get good at it, the world begins to give you that attention, and that's when you unlock capital from it. It happens almost magically. So magically that most people will not even believe it when I say it, but they have to experience it for themselves. And I'm a living example of that. There's so many parts of me that just started as a passion project and today are in some way my livelihood, if not more. And that was because I didn't put any pressure of making money on them from day one. I continued to hone them. And at some point of time, the world just stood up and gave me the attention that I thought I could use to unlock. And when it unlocked, it just stayed.
Great. So, Ankur, there is this little thing that people are talking of called self-love. I mean, it's become a very, inherent part of self-help, which has come up. But without much deliberation and unknowingly, people slip into from self-love to selfishness, right? where you start thinking of yourself without thinking of other people. What, in your opinion, is it that you think that people can practice self love without slipping into selfishness?
That's a great question. So, one of my favorite questions in the list of 36 that I've answered in my new book is the last question that I answered, which is how to become your best friend. And the reason why that question is close to me is because I believe I am my best friend. And I believe that there isn't anybody who is as close to me than I am to myself. And I believe that the big distinction between self-love and selfishness is the distinction of why are you doing what you're doing. Very often, people confuse that self-love is do the things that make you happy. But self-love is about you acknowledging why you do the things that you do. It is not about making it right. Instead, having that awareness of why you're doing what you do. For example, you may be, say, a jealous person by nature, and you're filled with jealousy when, whatever, you see your partner spending time with someone, or you see your best friends making friends elsewhere, or maybe even your parents attending to your siblings. Self-love is you recognizing why you feel that jealousy. Because the minute you recognize why you feel what you feel, the purpose of that emotion is served, and that emotion fades away. It's like jealousy is meant to tell you something. But when you already know why you are feeling that way, jealousy is like, oh, my job's done. I can go. And they just go away. And that then becomes your true self. You've almost accepted yourself as that person. Of course, you can work on it and become better and so on, but that's different. It is the acceptance of who you are, but with the combination of why you are where you are or who you are, that is self-love. And the minute you start thinking of, no, self-love for me is that people need to attend to me, or I need to attend to myself because that's the way that I cure or handle my jealousy, it could then go into the selfishness that you described, which then becomes not self-love, but almost self-indulgence. And there's a very fine line, as you rightly pointed out. So for me, self-awareness is the true definition of self-love.
So, Ankur, let's talk about your book. Uh, you know, this book is answering 36 questions, right? And are these the most commonly asked questions, or are these the most important 36 questions that came into your mind that you feel will impact everyone who reads it?
Yeah, I'd admit these are the 36 frequently asked questions. So the first draft of the book was about 80,000 words and about 57 questions answered. And it was, of course, an overkill. And then I went back into my audience, and my audience is always so wonderful, where they keep asking these questions and giving us this feedback, whether through comments, whether through direct engagements. So it was very obvious that of those 57, these 36 were the most frequent ones. And that's why you would have such questions which may not feel like very important. Like one question, for instance, is, how do you conduct yourself in the first 90 days of a job? And that may not be a life-altering question, certainly not for somebody like you and me, but for somebody who's entering the workforce for the first time or is a young professional, that could be the difference between them having a good career or not, or at least learning the right way or not. And they are always struggling. It's like, well, we want to create impact on the first day of our job. It's like, hold on, that's not possible and not happening. So you hold your horses, and this is how you should execute the first 3 months of your job, because that's when you will be ready to create that impact when the time is. So on and so forth. So these are certainly the most frequently asked questions from the audience that engages with me.
So before I let you go, my last question to you is that, Ankur, this time you're coming up with a audiobook on Audible. How has been your experience recording this book for Audible? And the reason I ask you is also because I have moved from reading a book to moving to ebooks, and now I'm listening to audiobooks. And some of these are very, very beautiful books,
Yeah.
but the recording sometimes, if not done by the author himself,
Yeah.
is not able to send that message across. So what has been your experience? And do you think that you are able to deliver a message better when you are reading this book out to someone?
It's such a great question. So my first experience of recording a book was the first book, which also came on Audible. And I'm so glad I went through this journey because I appreciated what listening to a book could mean. I only listen to audiobooks which are narrated by the authors, because as your point, I also hold it true. Somebody else may not be able to do full justice to it. But the authors who narrate their own books, they pour out all their emotions on every single word, because in some way they wrote that word themselves and they know exactly what they were feeling in that moment and so on. So it was very clear that Get Epic Shit Done, when released, should release with not just the paperback or the hardcover, but with also the audiobook version. And it has to be a simultaneous release. So we started working beforehand and making sure that we are hitting the December 17th release, which is happening. And the interesting bit was, this book is a conversation between a teacher and a student. So now we had two voices and we had two emotions. And while I could capture my emotion, I was also very keen and particular about the emotion of the student who was engaging. But it was such a professional activity and such a wonderful learning experience for me, where credit to her, she did such a brilliant job of capturing those emotions the way that the student would. We also did that synchronously and then asynchronously. And I think there were some elements which I would 100% argue will be far, far, far better in an audiobook than the written word can ever express, because it just comes out. It just absolutely comes out. One instance that I would, if you would allow me, is the last chapter, which is again, How to Become Your Best Friend, has this very emotional moment right towards the end of the book where the student for the first time ends up crying. And the written word is student bracket crying semicolon and then saying, I know what you mean. But you don't know what you mean because you're crying in that moment. And when I heard her just go through that sequence, and she's just so brilliant, she was actually crying in that moment. And that's it, like goosebumps. And I don't think any written word would ever do justice to that sentence as an audiobook will.
While I was very keen to get the personally signed book from Ankur Warikoo, but I know that, while I still would want that, I will go and, get this audiobook just to especially listen to that last question. And Ankur, thank you so much for your time. This has been one of the most relatable conversations because, being in the same shoes as an employee to an entrepreneur, I had a failed entrepreneurial experience, got back. So I could resonate with every word that you were saying. And at the end of it, the biggest takeaway from the conversation is ask yourself, why are you doing what you are doing? Brilliant conversation. Thank you so much, Ankur, for your time. Look forward to catch up with you soon again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Harbinder. This was so much fun. Thanks for the thoughtful questions.
Thank you.